We are here. Marty just woke up. He was surprised to see $115,000 Bitcoin. I said, dude, where have you been the last 24 hours? Yeah,
Let's go.
Things are moving. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. Some things are kind of different news items, different movings of goalposts, different extensions of timelines, a lot of things that you may have missed. Let's jump into it. But before we do, links below for this team. We're streaming on all our different channels, so you can see us there. And Mando, how are you this fine day?
I'm doing great. Nice to see the markets showing a little bit of green over the weekend. People were losing their minds.
By the way, whenever I see you in purple, I always think of Prince. Wasn't that his color?
A bit of a purple hue to me, I noticed today. Maybe I need to start wearing so many blue shirts, but yeah, I think it's as well.
Oh, it's blue. It's not purple. Okay, it's just super
blue.
today.
It's a blue shirt. It's a very, very purple.
Must be your camera. CTO, happy with the
great. I'm great. I'm really happy to see this recovery. I think it's significant, as we'll talk about. I was a little worried last week, and so I'm very happy to see this.
Yeah, you were worried the last 2 weeks, and I was like, why is he worried? I don't know.
Yeah,
I was called a hyper bull guy. And Satoshi, what's going on, man?
Oh, great. If had a great weekend. Really, obviously nice to see the market back at 115,000. Very excited for this week. I mean, this week is stacked, guys. A massive week, so expect volatility, but exciting.
Yeah, if certain things happen. You know, there are things scheduled, but they may not happen. And by the way, speaking of Satoshi, we think we may have found him. Axl Rose doing a gig in El Salvador wearing a Satoshi Nakamoto shirt.
Ooh, Axl Rose.
Yeah, Guns N' Roses. For those who are old enough to remember. But let's get into the story. We have a lot to chat about. And first of all, this one's called Maturity Meets Mutation. And what I mean by that is things are much more mature now and things are changing at the same time. And we'll unpack that. But first of all, this is kind of stunning. Shout out to Michael Saylor and his team. 95% of Bitcoin will be mined in 21 days. And what's bizarre about that is literally over the next 10 years, only 4 million, 4% more will be mined. And after that, the people will be fighting for the next 100 years over the last 1%. Does this strike you as being a very hard asset, Mando, when you see things in this simple perspective?
Yeah, I think people perhaps haven't realized how much of Bitcoin has been mined. Like, just because we have 4-year rolling cycles doesn't mean that that's like an equal amount still to come. It's going to get very, very small with each successive halving. So I do think it's going to be like, it's an interesting time here where demand becomes the much, much bigger part of the equation than supply. It's also part of the reason why I think we're kind of moving away from the 4-year cycle slightly, because again, it's less of an impact each time. 12 years ago, it's a big deal. Now not so much. So I think this is going to be a big thing, and I think it moves the question of Bitcoin purely more towards demand than it does to supply now.
Yeah, I like that. As CTO, imagine what the price would be in the year 2035 when only 1% is left. Would that be a wake-up call to the world?
Yeah, so the inflation is really low in Bitcoin. What is it, 0.8%, something like that now? I tried to really sort out what's the inflation in gold some time ago, and I think I got it to about 3.5%, something like that. Depends, of course, a little how you count, but it's definitely lower than gold today. And it's a massive difference from a couple of years ago. That's why the halving was important before. I mean, the yearly inflation in 2015 was like 10%, and then it was 4% in 2017, 2018. So, of course, then the newly issued Bitcoin matter a lot more than it does now. Now it's already very low. And, of course, it's massively lower than any fiat currency almost. So it's someone has to sell for there to be Bitcoin to buy more and more. It's not the miners so much anymore that's creating the supply. It is sellers.
Yeah. And what's also completely fascinating to me is, it's now a bona fide asset class and the big money has come. And retail, or the former whales, have sold more than they've ever sold in any previous cycle, which takes us to Marty. How do you interpret this?
Well, I think first of all, 2140, right, is the date for all the Bitcoin. So 2140. I think we'll see Bitcoin's true intention. I don't think people are very aware of how much of the sell pressure comes from miners. Miners are constantly selling new Bitcoin. And so there's a separate OTC price that we're not really aware of. I mean, we have speculation, but the true price, the price on exchanges like Binance is, retail price, market price, very manipulated. The OTC price is the real price of Bitcoin, and we're not very aware of what it is. But I think at the end of the 2040 thing, Bitcoin will enter into a new chapter of which it's nobody's quite sure exactly about how it will be used and how revenue will be created. Specifically for miners, obviously miners will have no incentive, no more block rewards. So it'll become purely transactional fees as the primary incentive, which means Bitcoin will change into a slightly different protocol. And I'm excited to see that, because that could be when it truly blossoms, in my opinion, as a payment device, things like Lightning, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I'm excited to see it. It's 2140. It's still a long way away. But I think the miners' selling pressure has been a very dominant force in, the chart of Bitcoin over the last few years, and that'll subside over time. But what's really interesting, James, is the amount of solo miners that have been mining full coins lately.
Yes,
I think that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
They're literally striking gold.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, what I do have a spicy take on this. I don't believe Bitcoin will be around in the year 2140, so it'll be long gone. The world will be extremely different between AI, AGI, ASI, quantum computing. Everything will be different. And also, you can take into account fiat currencies never last more than 70 years. Is Bitcoin going to last more than 130, 140 years? I don't know. Don't think so. But let's talk about the bull market duration. A lot of questions. I was talking about this is a longer cycle. This is a longer cycle. And people are saying, no, it's not. It's the same as everybody. And all the experts say it's the same. Nothing is different this time. But I put together a simple little chart that shows you the duration. And CTO, this will appeal to you. The duration between bear markets from the time the bear market ends to the time the bear market begins, you can see it gets longer, between 100 and 150 days each time. So way back in 2014, 2015, it was 818 days. Then the previous cycle was 978 days when it ended in November 2022. Coincidentally, that is 3 years from now. And then this cycle currently is running for 1,056 days. So this proves the cycles are definitely getting longer. What do you say, CTO?
I thought the 4-year cycle would end already last cycle. It turned out it didn't. It continued one more time. But I still have the same position. I feel that it doesn't matter anymore for the exact reason we just talked about with the issuance. Like when you issue a lot of supply, you issue like 10% every year, and then you cut that to 5%. It's like a massive difference. So then the cycles really matters. But now when the miners are anyway issuing so little Bitcoin every year, it barely matters if they go from 0.8% of inflation to 0.4% inflation. So it doesn't really, it's not what moves the price. It's the buyers and sellers right now is moving the price. So I feel that the 4-year cycle doesn't matter anymore. And my take on this is, I actually found it very interesting what you said last week, Mando. You said that perhaps there are whales who follow the 4-year cycle. They think it's going to end now, so they take their Bitcoin and they sell them, and price dumped. But if we get a month ahead or 2 months ahead, and it turns out that it didn't really dump, it didn't really start the bear market, then that reason for selling is gone. Those who thought it would play out, and that was the reason they are selling. If it didn't dump, okay, then maybe they're not interested in selling anymore, because then that's the evidence that the 4-year cycle is over. And I think that was a very interesting thing, because one of the best tips that I've learned in investing and trading is to figure out what are the buyers doing and what are the sellers doing and why. And if the why of the sellers here is that they think the 4-year cycle will end, and that's why they dumped a bunch of Bitcoin on the market. If that ends, perhaps they will stop selling. So that's my take on this. And I do think the 4-year cycle will end, and perhaps this is the cycle where it will end.
Yeah. Marty, what do you make of these longer?
I agree with CTO. I don't think there's a cycle anymore. I mean, if you look at the nature of the cycle and why there was a cycle, I mean, first of all, if you speak to people about it, they're very ignorant about why there is a cycle. They just believe there is a cycle. They don't really understand the sort of technical logistics and psychological factors that make the cycle. And just like CTO Larson said, most of the cycle is powered by thinking there is a cycle. Oh, it's the top, so it's going to go down, therefore I need to take profits. But the buyers of Bitcoin have changed radically. It used to be Silk Road and a bunch of nerds. Now it's treasury companies and sovereigns. They have a very different agenda. So I think if you look at the Bitcoin cycle, which is characterized by like significant price increases followed by sharp corrections, right? It's driven by economics, technical things, and both these psychological factors. And I think that's changed. The halving event, it's changed. It's radically different. It's much more minute than it's ever been. It's not as dramatic on the supply and demand macro. The market psychology, as I said, it's completely changed. This is a store of value. And secondly, what are you going to sell into? You're selling into an extremely depreciating asset. I mean, currency. It's literally the purchasing power is dropping, more than it ever has. So I think these dynamics have changed entirely. And there is no more cycle. And if you look at what happened in 2024, how we've just started following global money supply, it's clear to me there is no cycle. This is just, there's Wyckoff accumulations, there's distributions, reaccumulations, and distributions. And I think we're going through a monetary transition, and the cycle no longer exists. The only reason people sell is because they foreshadow that there will be a cycle. I agree with CTO 100% there.
Yeah, this is
in my opinion, the cycle is over.
Yeah, this is interesting. We're going into, today and Wednesday, or historically, the two best days of the year for Bitcoin. Will that be true this time around? And if it's not, it's another one of the 100th proof points that it is different this time. Mando, there's another big thing happening here. One, it's supposed to be the best 2 days of the year between Monday and Wednesday. And we had record debt. We spiked to $38 trillion. Now, what's wild about that is, if I recall, we hit 34 trillion in January 2024, 35 trillion in July 2024, 36 trillion November 2024. We hit 37 trillion in July 2025, and now we're at 38 trillion. This thing is going vertical. So, and same with global debt. Global debt now is over $350 trillion. All the nations, they're just everybody's printing fiat like there's no tomorrow. And when people talk about a Bitcoin bubble, can you give them confidence it's not a bubble because there's so much money in the system?
Yeah, look, the money printing even in the US hasn't even started. I think quantitative tightening, people are expecting to potentially end this week with kind of the Fed announcements. So I don't think it's even quite happened yet. At least it's been more backdoor money printing in the US. So we could be in for a period here of massive money printing. The main difference here as well is the interest rates on the debt. Like, the US is spending over $1 trillion just in interest rates, and if you're involved in anything with interest rates, it's just basically just a sunk cost. Like, that is just a massive cost being added on every single year to the debt alongside budget deficits. So I think we're not quite at spiral levels, as in like the markets haven't quite gone into spiral levels on any country really. But the idea is that the only thing to solve for this is by money printing, and that's true in every single economy around the world right now. So I think Bitcoin is in this special place. Gold is obviously benefiting from this too, and you're clearly seeing massive buying of gold out of Asia at the moment, which I think is driving up the price there too. But Bitcoin has been a pretty friendly asset at the moment in that sort of world too. On the 4-year cycle stuff, look, I think genuinely it's about 50-50. Like, if you were to do a poll today when you asked who thinks it's a 4-year cycle or not, I still think about 50% of people would say it is. So even if you're in the side of you don't think it is, I think we still have to appreciate that is a big technical going on in the market right now, in that people will come in and sell for that sort of reason. And I'm of the belief that it's also not a 4-year cycle, but as CTO says, I also probably thought that last cycle, and it was. But I feel stronger about it this time, that I don't think it's going to be a 4-year cycle, just because of the change in market structure. And
another big thing that people don't really understand, they see the big 38 trillion number, but they don't understand there's very different makeups of that number, right? There's debt held by the public, and then intergovernmental debt. Remember, the Fed lends money to the Treasury lends money to the government then lends money back to the Fed. There's this cycle. And if you look at the actual numbers, the 38 trillion, roughly 29 trillion is held by the public, 7.6 trillion is intergovernmental holdings. And if you remove that, and then you remove the, all of the sort of the new debt, which has been issued by the Treasury, you get back to the money supply, around 22.5 trillion. So actually, this number is very convoluted. You have to disregard the debt between each governmental agency and the government itself, which is really where the new debt is coming from. So the debt is really the money supply. And as we always say, money right now, the US dollar money, fiat, is just debt. That is the real debt. The money supply is the debt. And that is what's being converted.
And there's also
currency to a hard money-based currency.
There's also debt that's due that's not even included in that, for all the pensions and Social Security and everything. Another $120 trillion on top of that. So the whole debt system is just mad. If you think denominating in fiat is just a fool's errand as we go forward, well, let's get into some more of the craziness happening in the world. Considering somebody mentioned market structure, this little story here, pardon, the CZ pardon had a lot of people very upset. Marty, CZ has done some shady stuff, Binance continues to do some stuff. We know that the US president is pro-crypto, but they're apparently, pardon, and then I think CZ was with Dana White at the UFC fight in Dubai as well. So it's all over the place. It's like, are crimes anymore, or what's going on here, Marty?
Look, I don't know CZ personally. I've never met him. I just know Binance, and I know the blockchain, and I watch transactions, and I know what's going on, over the years. So obviously, the benefit of the doubt, CZ was away. Maybe it was the new management of Binance that got so aggressive with the manipulation. The market definitely feels like it's changed since he got pardoned in the last few days. Let's see. Maybe give him a chance. Maybe CZ will return and bring a semblance of some morality to the markets. But at the end of the day, it is the strangest thing. There was always a lot of controversy around the 4-month sentence. The big fine, how they paid the fine. Are they in cahoots? We know that Sam Bankman-Fried was used to suppress Bitcoin at 30,000. Has CZ been used to suppress Bitcoin at 100,000? We don't know. We will never know. But it is very strange, James. This whole new narrative is extremely bizarre. What do you think of it, Mando?
The pardon stuff? I mean, I thought it was slightly expected, just because if you actually look at what's been going on there, Binance is basically is the main partner for the Trump stablecoin, World Liberty Financial, USD1. And if you look at kind of where the interest payments go, they're basically paying the Trump family tens of millions of dollars a year at the moment. So it's been coming for a little bit of time. I don't really know what CZ's role is going to be here, but if I'm looking at purely from a price perspective, I do think he'll continue to try and be a dominant figure in crypto, and probably will try and pump BNB and some of the things around it. Personally, I don't know if what all happened recently was like market manipulation as much as just of what we just spoke about, like people selling. And Binance had some horrific internal controls around the stablecoin pegs that it had. If that was on purpose or not, maybe it was, but because they flushed out so many different people, have made so much money. But I think they're now going to have a ton of lawsuits on the back of that as well. It's very clear that a lot of the market makers are organizing at the moment are going to sue Binance as well as some of the major funds. So I don't know if that was their plan, to accumulate as much as they can before we went. Then I think it may backfire on them too.
Yeah, And what jurisdiction is Binance in again? Some offshore place. So it's going to be hard to sue them.
Dubai. Okay. I mean, the main headquarters for Binance is now in Dubai.
Okay, they moved it. And then we have another moving of the goalpost, CTO. We chatted about this very briefly. Mt. Gox, once again, said instead of paying back the creditors in October 2025, we're going to move it to October 2026. A lot of people think, oh, this is great news, no sell pressure. But a lot of those, I believe, the Mt. Gox holders of Bitcoin would hold it anyway. They wouldn't sell it. But what's interesting about this is I think it's based on a price from 2024 Bitcoin price, which was as low as 30,000, depending on the time frame. And now they're saying you're not getting it till nearly the end of next year. Well, why are they not giving them?
I know people have been waiting on this for just like every single year. It just gets another yearly extension. Literally every single year they get a yearly extension, and they have no idea what's going on. It's like, how is
they trading it?
To just send the Bitcoin. They have it all. They've paid out like 80% of people, but there's a final 20%. They're just like, yeah, no, I have no idea how to send it to you.
Is it their trading bag, Mando?
I have some people who are like, because a lot of people, obviously they couldn't trade this Bitcoin in this period. So although they only got like 15, 20 cents on the dollar, it's basically Bitcoin that they weren't able to sell for like 10 years, right? So it is huge amounts for some people. If you speak to the people around these sort of claims, like it's still like, imagine if you just found a Bitcoin wallet from wherever this was, 2013, and you hadn't been allowed to touch it, even at a 90 or 85% discount. That's going to be a lot of money. So it is a big deal for a lot of people.
That's real diamond hands. CTO, we've lived through this for a long time. And it's always the dark cloud hanging over the space. Oh my God, Mt. Gox are going to distribute. And we've seen every time it does happen in the past, it's a nothing burger. But would you be upset if this was you?
Oh, I would have been extremely upset. I had not discovered Bitcoin. I was not part of Mt. Gox, but I've spoken to some people, and of course it's extremely frustrating. I'm checking now, it was in February 2014. So what is that? 11 and a half years ago?
Yeah.
Imagine waiting 11 and a half years.
Amazing, 11 and a half years.
And then, of course, like you said, Mando, probably it was a better outcome for most people. Because at least official statistics is that the majority of people lose money in Bitcoin. That's we have a famous statistics from Sweden, which has a lot of statistics about everything, and they have like surveyed everyone who owned all the price tracker certificates, and over 6 years, when Bitcoin went up 3,000%, the majority lost money, and you can only buy the long side. It's not that they shorted it or something. They just happen to buy all the local tops and sell all the local bottoms every single time. So even the asset goes up like thousands of percent, still lose money. So this kind of prevented people from that. And so in a way, but of course, if you never get the money or it just keeps going forward, you cannot enjoy it either. So it is probably extremely frustrating for everyone who is waiting for that.
Just for clarity, they're not really restarting. This is just the extension of the October creditor repayment deadline, but they still hold 34,000 Bitcoin. That's about $4 billion. So yeah, it is scary once again.
And then we have another little thing that nobody's really talking about, but I personally would be concerned about. This is what I call for fork's sake. For ETF holders, if there is, like, between this core and knots, the disputing in the camp of Bitcoin, if there is a fork a la SegWit way back when, some people believe that BlackRock would agree to invalidate blocks that contain spam, like a soft fork like SegWit. But if there is a distribution of a split in the chain, BlackRock would only give people the part to get one chain, not two. Now, I think this might be just blowing things up more than they need to be discussed about if Bitcoin splits. But Marty, what are the odds, considering you're Satoshi today, what are the odds of this even happening? Or is this
I think slim to none. The accounts that are posting this are notorious conspiracy people. I haven't heard anything from Fink or anything. Doesn't make any sense. I think it's just a crypto Twitter narrative.
Have you ever heard of a conspiracy theory that didn't turn out to be true?
Yeah, a couple. I mean, I don't think it's happening personally. I think it's nonsense. But technically they could do it, but I mean, there's 330,000 nodes validating Bitcoin. They would have to create an equally, distributed network to create the value and the security of the Bitcoin network. I don't think it's financially viable. They'd have to spend trillions.
The wording in there is so interesting. The sponsor selects valid chain at discretion based on compliance. Mando, would that keep you awake at night if you had all your money in IBIT?
Do you think Bitcoin's going to fork? I feel like it's been I haven't heard about that for a while. There's been some talk about the idea of like a tail emission for the security budget, like way down the line. But I don't think you need to worry about this, guys. Basically.
That's good. Okay, good cover. And CTO, I'm sure you're on the same page.
Yeah, I agree. I can maybe add one thing. When Bitcoin did fork back in, was it 2017? There was a lot of discussion about this. Some exchanges said that we will not distribute the forked coin. But in the end, I think most of the bigger ones caved and did distribute. Maybe someone in the comments can share. So, if it would happen, they would probably distribute the forked coin.
The key factors are in the S1, you have to disclose risks. And they did definitely disclose a risk and a sort of mitigation strategy if Bitcoin forked in their S1, and a lot of this narrative is coming from the wording in there. So it's not happening, but there is definitely wording in the BlackRock S1 to say, how would they follow the dominant network? How would they decide the dominant network, etc. So nothing has happened. This is all just once again worrying about things that haven't happened yet.
Yeah. And just to tie in for the last thing, I know that some of the people that I know are waiting to get their Bitcoin from Mt. Gox. I've also got a Bitcoin Cash that they're going to get. So even a defunct exchange still forked and made sure their users got the Bitcoin Cash. So I think at the end of the day, sense makes through.
Well, good. Gives us all a little bit of comfort. But it is, we should always, as investors, be concerned about the 1% chance of things happening and be aware of that. That's kind of the Bitcoin news out of the way. We do have a little bit of macro news, one of the reasons why the market's pumping right now. And it's something that we have to keep an eye on as well. Everybody is now expecting a meeting and a deal between China and the US around tariffs. It's supposed to happen Thursday. I'm not sure where. I know that the US president, I think, was in Malaysia or somewhere like that recently. Odds. I know, Marty, you track the politics real close. What odds would you give this of happening and being resolved? Besant is very bullish on this.
I think it's definitely happening. I think that China called the bluff. Trump has realized the bluff was called. There's too much at stake. I think it has to happen, especially the reaction from the market or the narrative. I think it has to happen.
Yeah, we have big moves. Tesla moving big, Nvidia moving big.
I think the big macro news, James, happening right now is gold is at 39.73. It's dumping.
Rotation station. A lot of people believe, and this is so important because we spoke about the rotation. Like once gold shot above 4,000, it's like mean reversion has to happen. It doesn't double in a short window of time. It's never done that in the history of the world. And then we spoke about rotation. If you were a clever gold investor, you sell it 4,400, 4,500. You go in to the biggest deviation in price ever for Bitcoin and gold. Mando, do you believe gold bugs that invest in gold would even be smart enough to rotate into Bitcoin?
Oh, I know some people in crypto that bought tokenized, because it's quite easy to buy gold on chain right now. You have Tether has got this tokenized gold. There's various different ways you can buy it, and there's lots of RWA ways you can buy it now. Even on like perps, I think you can buy it. So I know some people in crypto who are trading both of those. I am genuinely bullish on gold too. Like I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, you have to be one or the other. I do think that I'm a buyer of real assets here. And gold doesn't have the leverage of, let's say, the property market right now. So I do think it's an interesting asset to own alongside Bitcoin as well. I mean, I was thinking of all the bearish things for gold that could happen in the future, and I would say that there are more for gold than I can see for Bitcoin on the supply side. Like one thing that I've been looking at a little bit, and this is really just me going down the rabbit hole last week, was if in a world of unlimited energy, or at least very low cost, very abundant energy, particularly from nuclear fusion. There is a world where you could move different elements into gold. And that would be a bit of a game changer. There's a lot of these like, oh, they'll find it from an asteroid or they'll find new supply. But if we're really going to a world, which a lot of people predict, of just abundant energy from nuclear, particularly nuclear fusion, then in that world, you can do a lot of things in terms of transforming different assets, I would say. And gold at $5,000, I would be looking to create as much of that as I could.
Mm. And interesting take as well. There's a lot of talk as well about robots being able to mine way deeper, way hotter than humans have been able to in the past. And there was talk last week or 2 weeks ago about a new gold, whatever, thread found under a Chinese gold mine too, as well as the gold discoveries in Africa. And back to your point earlier, CTO, you mentioned gold inflation. Gold inflation varies between 1.6% and about 3%. But with the price of gold being so high, people are just going to mine more because it's lucrative to mine now. So the supply will increase maybe beyond 2.5–3%. And that's what's important to note.
That's my thing. I'm bullish on gold, but there's just more things that could happen, basically.
I mean, what's interesting, guys, well, first of all, US institutional investors are definitely rotating from gold profits into Bitcoin based on ETF flows, which should coincide, like gold's coming down coincides with Bitcoin coming up on October 26th. That's for a fact. The interesting thing is if there's a 1% rotation out of gold, that's a projected Bitcoin price of 140 to 160,000. If there's a 3% rotation, that's 188,000. And if there's a 4 to 5% rotation, which people are expecting, that's a $215 to $242,000 Bitcoin.
Exactly. I will show a very interesting chart. If we can just show I have to show the Bitcoin chart first to kind of put it in perspective. I mean, the Bitcoin chart felt really scary here with the fake and everything. But if we zoom out more, these are the weekly candles. There is also a very, very positive interpretation of the last month's price action, and that is this one. So here we see an inverse head and shoulders, which is a bullish pattern. This orange level here at about 108,000 is then the neckline. And if we look at it through this lens, this whole drama was just a retest of that neckline. And on the weekly chart, it looks extremely positive. You see the wicks are below and then support back up. It looks kind of different if looking on the daily chart, but through this, there is a very positive lens to look at the price action through, and that is this one. So
can you throw the 200-week moving average on that, because that is also bull market support?
Yeah, it is. I will set that up also. But I just want to connect back to what you guys just said about the gold.
This is the one. This is the chart. There we go. That's the chart to look at. Look at that.
The interesting thing here is that, so this is Bitcoin divided by
gold.
And as you see here, price turned exactly at the point where it turned last time, which was in April.
10th of April, correct.
Yeah. So when looking at this does not feel like a coincidence at all. It feels like there were people perhaps waiting or perhaps moving price, and they had decided they're going to run it down to the previous support, and that's where we're turning it around.
There's a bit of macro I want to add into that, CTO, as well, because it's very important. 8th of April was peak tariff tantrum, and people went to security, which risk off, which is gold. That's why gold popped, and Bitcoin tanked to 75K. Now we've got tariff tantrums part 2, but with the new Chinese tariffs from the US, with that potentially being resolved, people are moving away from being risk off, away from gold, into risk on again, which Bitcoin typically is correlated to NASDAQ risk assets.
CTO, flip that to a weekly chart. Flip that to a weekly.
Yeah.
And then have a look at the cup and handle. Go, just zoom out a little bit. Go back.
Exactly. So, absolutely. So you have like a cup and handle. You can draw inverse head and shoulder. If this breaks out here, guys, like up here, 38, 39.
I'm calling for a $50 to $52 ounce gold to Bitcoin ratio.
Yeah, I said at least 41 was going to happen, and if we get to 41, that's $160,000 Bitcoin price.
Yeah, and if we get the breakout here, guys, no one's going to miss it. It will be all over the place. That Bitcoin is like really taking off from gold. So, and then it can become self-fulfilling and so on. So this is very exciting. And just to kind of conclude this point, this makes me feel that perhaps much of this was some manipulation here, because it's like too much of a coincidence, guys. It's not going to turn exactly there by coincidence.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We have one other quick point, actually, because this ties into the price action, and this is the max pain price for the end of October, way back in May, June of this year. The options pricing was all asking for $140,000 Bitcoin. We're not going to get that in the next 4 days. Let's be realistic. And the max pain is 114K, which means over the next 3, 4, 5 days, we'll gravitate towards 114K. And the price right now is $115,023. What does anybody think is going to happen? Like, we are now positive for October, which is a very big thing. Having a red October, but Mando, what's your take on this?
I just think it's hilarious that we're now green for October. Like, that is wild. Like, the timeline gave up this month, and we're actually green. We're green for September, and we're green for October. By looks of it.
Yeah. Tesla just shot up nearly 5%. Shout out to T&D Tesla in the chat too. Yeah, this is good. It's a very positive signal, Mando, psychologically, to be positive in what is normally called October. I've been calling it Rectember because it was a rough Rectember, but this is why you always have to keep your head out the window. This was driven by the macro, by the Chinese USA tariffs. Would you agree with that, Mando?
I think this points to the 4-year cycle stuff again. I don't want to say it again, but like, it just, the timeline was so willing to tell you it was over, and that, you know, the world was going to end, and actually we're going to end up like a few percentage points on the month.
Yeah.
It tells you that you have to be prepared for volatility, and you have to have a lot of belief at this stage. Like, it may just be easier for some people to just be like, look, I'm going to get back into the market in like early December, when we've just spoken about when that will really become clear. But the market may trend up over the next month, but it's the market is willing to throw it all away, or the sentiment tells you that everyone's willing to throw it all away as soon as Bitcoin loses a few percentage points at the moment, which that's an opportunity at the same time.
Yeah, and Marty, what you actually said was bang on too, because the ETF flows are extremely strong. They're even stronger than September, and part of that reflects to what you're talking about with the rotation. We're up $4.3 billion so far in the month of October, and the previous month was about 3.3 billion, if I recall. So that's also very positive.
Yeah, I think that the storybook is playing out perfectly. You know, chapter by chapter, there was $20 billion of long leverage in the market that needed to be removed before we head into the end of QT. Money printing, rate drops, and all of the significant macro headwinds, including gold rotation. And we saw they executed it to perfection in much faster time than we expected. Literally within a couple of hours, they had flushed the market, removed the longs. We're now sitting at $20 billion of short leverage liquidations up to all-time high. In other words, if Bitcoin returns to all-time high, they make $20 billion in liquidations. That's their report. So the headwinds are clear. This is the week. We've got massive news coming this week, obviously, with the FOMC. If Jerome Powell mentions the words, the end of QT, I think you'll see a significant move in the market.
QE is guaranteed. It has to, because the regional banks are now broke. Money needs to come into the system. There is no cash to keep these banks alive, or else we get a Silicon Valley Bank 2.0 happening again. And all the macro guys are hot on that. Let's switch gears and move on. This is a hilarious meme. I was laughing. $200. How many times have we pierced $200? Tell us what's happening with this asset. Is it all Binance manipulation? People are so frustrated. All the metrics are rock solid for this chain. Like I saw a recent stat, nearly 60% of all revenue is made by Solana and Hyperliquid. 40% is shared across the other million chains. Like, it's bizarre the concentration of winners take most. we'll go to a chart and maybe a cup and handle or head and shoulders from CTO in a minute. But Manda, what do you make of this? People are frustrated with Solana. What do you
It's
say?
a very frustrating asset this year. Honestly, Solana's been frustrating for a couple of years now, right? Like, it feels as though it's been in and around this area for a while. Even though a huge amount of value has been going on, at least in the apps on Solana. I do think, I said it maybe a few months ago, that I think that 2026 is Solana's year, because the ETF will start to come and be a factor, and you'll see exactly the same narrative as we just saw for ETH, and that retail will be introduced to Sol, and that will be just a narrative shift for it. So it's not going lower. That's what's also important, right? A lot of L1s, you look across the various different L1s that were ETH or even Solana killers, they're all kind of dead apart from Hyperliquid, right? You bring up a chart of like a SUI or an AVAX, they haven't had a good last few months at all. Solana's just like at 200 or up or down 10% at all times. I do think next year is going to be the year.
And S&P 500 just broke another new all-time high too. The bears are in disbelief. CTO, let's go to you and tell us what's happening with Solana. Is there any hope for us?
Exactly. I showed this chart last week. I called it the Hopium chart of the week, and I'm only half joking. So if price goes back up here to this region, can discuss if it's 240, 250, 260, but in this region, that completes an inverse head and shoulders. You see left shoulder, head, right shoulder. And it's not only a random level that it needs to break through. It's literally the point where it turned last cycle or back in 2021. So while I'm usually mostly analyzing the coin to BTC chart, I think this time this is very significant. Like, if this breaks through here, this orange line, and really moves up and closes above, okay, it's like a massively bullish chart construction. No one's going to miss it in this industry. And also, it is the breakout, the real breakout from this high here in the last cycle. And everyone will talk about it. There will be massive Solana FOMO if that happens. I can almost guarantee that. So if we look on Sol to BTC, it's still kind of frustrating. It made this head and shoulder instead of inverse head and shoulder. It's a topish pattern, and it hasn't really invalidated it yet. So like Sol to Bitcoin is not completely there yet, but there is this thing brewing here, guys. This is brewing, and if this confirms, guys, I think that we could get this epic level of rally again that we've seen previous years with Solana, just like Mando said here.
Marty, tell us, update us on the government shutdown, which I have zero interest in, but the only time I do have interest in it is when the SEC gets back to work and approves the ETFs.
Yeah, let me run through the update. So
thanks, CTO.
Both the 21 shares and the Bitwise staking Solana ETFs have been approved. Their ATAs have been signed off, which is the final step. So from a regulatory and administrative perspective, everything is complete. But because of the government shutdown, they will not be able to be, the S1 won't be approved, which is what the CBOE and the New York Stock Exchange require to list. So we're basically waiting for the government to unlock, which they're now on their 13th vote, with the Democrats stalling, wanting healthcare for illegal immigrants and with their foot down. So we've got a political headwind for that, but it's just a matter of time.
By the way, Marty, if you mention that reason, people will go nuts. So.
It just is the reason. And then final thing, a bit of an unknown thing, is that the reason there's so much selling pressure on Solana, especially when it gets, to 210, 220, 230, is understand there's 609,000 Solana released every month out of the Alameda contract into both Pantera, Galaxy, and Kroll, the bankruptcy attorney's wallets. And Kroll is using the Solana sales to pay back creditors. So that goes on until 2028, January 2028. It's going on all the time. That's why you'll see every time Solana runs, it gets brought back really fast. That's basically, Kroll was instructed by the courts to sell the Solana to pay creditors, but in a way that doesn't really impact the market. So they're doing it with sensitivity And all that's really important is the OTC price. It was 132, I think 3 months ago. In this last month's unlock, I believe it's at 184 right now. So we need the sole OTC floor to hit 200, which is really, I believe, where we are roughly now, given what I hear from reserve companies. So we're nearly at that 200 floor price, but we're going to have to endure repayment to creditors, for at least a couple more years. Obviously we have headwinds. Like today, the Hong Kong Solana ETF goes live today, which is huge. Remember, that means mainland Chinese can invest in Solana for the first time. And then we've got obviously the 2 approved, and another 7 will be approved for the US. But at the end of the day, there is the selling pressure from the Alameda thing, which is ongoing. It's been mitigated with a lot of sales to Pantera and Gemini, but Kroll, the bankruptcy attorney, still receive, hundreds of thousands of SOL a month, 0.2 to 0.5% of the total holdings, which they have to sell on the free market or OTC, but mostly on the free market, in order to pay back creditors. So that's really what's going on.
Yeah, it's interesting because last week about 200 million drained from Ethereum, 900 million went into Bitcoin, and about 33 million went into Solana. So still positive for Bitcoin and Solana, but now negative for ETH. That could be another rotation happening too. Let's talk technical stuff. There was a bit of a fight online over L2 security. I don't have to lean on CTO and Marty for this one. So totally picking fights again about layer 2. Basically, as we know, all the action, all the users happen on kind of base and layer 2s in Ethereum. But Tolly was having a go at layer 2s and their inherent risk, i.e. they inherit so-called security from the layer 1, but he thinks that's not true. Wormhole, for example, ETH on Solana has the same worst-case risks as ETH on base and generates as much revenue for the ETH L1 stakers. Thoughts on this, Marty or CTO? Tell us about security, and is there risk if you play with L2s?
You go ahead, CTO. I'll follow up.
Yeah, I mean, the L2s have an enormous security risk as a whole, and so do all bridges and the wormhole type of solutions, which has been hacked once. So the problem is that if you put a bunch of layer 1s into a layer 2 type of solution or a bridge type of solution, if that then gets hacked, the layer 1 might not bail you out. While if the layer 1 breaks, the whole protocol is broken. They have to go fix it. So that's the difference, and that's why layer 2 does add that security risk, not to mention the complexity. Marty, you can add.
Yeah, I think I agree with Tolly. Obviously, I've been very vocal about this. I think, first of all, there's a misnomer that L2s are blockchains. They're just side chains. They're centralized sequences. And if you guys remember, when Amazon went down, the first thing that went down were the L2s. Now, that was, to me, was an ultimate liveness test of decentralization. And I think it's now become clear to everybody that both Base and Optimism and Arbitrum, anything of these sequences that run primarily on Amazon, are a risk because they're reliant on centralized components, whilst things like Solana and Sui, which are truly decentralized, didn't have any outages because they don't rely on those things. So there is this reliance characteristic within the L2 ecosystem, and that extends to bridges, like CTO just said. Anything that's bridged or has a reliance on a third-party external centralized component is not decentralized. So I think it is very true, and Tolly is correct in what he's saying here. If you have an Ethereum proxy on Solana, it's just as secure as an L2 with Ethereum as the base layer. There's nothing technically different. So 100% he's right. I have to agree with him here. And I don't think there's anybody in the institutional world or in my world that wasn't shocked by what happened 2 weeks ago. What I think it was now a week ago with the Amazon with the Amazon thing. I think that was really a wake-up call for people that it's not just a narrative. These L2s rely on centralized components.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because it's worth revisiting, because over the past 2 weeks we had two monstrous events. We had the oracles and the manipulation and the erratic prices and the record liquidations, which are 10x higher than any time ever in history. So it shows you that crypto is not mature, it's not safe, it's still the Wild West. We were hoping we could have gotten away from that. And then last week, AWS going down, taking out Base, Coinbase, parts of all the layer 2s and Ethereum. And the only two things that were pretty much up were Solana and Twitter, X.
And Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, of course, yeah. Bitcoin's always up. Yeah.
Yep.
But anybody want to take a swipe at that again? Because two such huge events happening within a week and change of each other, for me, is pretty remarkable. They're both considered gray swans in my book. Mando?
The thing is, I like the price of ETH. I think ETH's going to go to all-time high relatively soon. I really do. I agree.
Banana zone talk.
I think it's had a nice little sweep down low. It's formed a nice base now at the previous point of resistance, which is around 4K, and I just think it looks all right. So I agree that was. I mean, I'm not a big fan of LTs. I haven't been for a long time. I don't know if it's enough to really define the price or like to throw things off right now. What I think is interesting right now is a lot of the L1s, particularly ones with DATs and even more so with ETFs, is how reflexive some of the narratives are, particularly around the DATs though. So like as the price goes up, right now, something like MicroStrategy hasn't been able to buy, right? Because it's been caught in this quagmire of its MNAV. And that's the same for a lot of the DATs out there for ETH and some of the other L1s. And it's interesting, as they go higher, I expect to see some of the NNAVs to go kind of above 1, and then the ETFs start to buy, and you get this like very reflexive, like, oh, now suddenly everyone cares about stable coins, or everyone suddenly cares about Tom Lee coming in to buy. And I think that's why I think it's gonna happen to Solana too. It's like you have these very reflexive up periods at the moment, and I think that might be what ETH is about to enter back into. It has massive deficiencies, but I'm still pretty bullish on it actually.
Yeah, awesome stuff. So full banana from Mando. In fact, you did hint on something, and a lot of people are concerned about this, and I know. Is MicroStrategy and the DATs. There's a couple of things happening. One is the NAV premiums are crashing across the board. Everybody is worried. But there comes a point where when it gets real low, like a NAV premium of 1 or 1.15, you have to have this sovereign PUD concept. I believe in that for MicroStrategy. If somebody wants to buy 640,800 Bitcoin, the easiest way is to buy an entity that has the bag. Also, we're seeing consolidation happening. We're seeing companies swoop in and buy bags cheap, even at a discount. Has anybody been tracking this at all? Hostile takeovers, accretive acquisitions for these DATs?
Have they been happening? I haven't heard of that.
Semler was acquired because they were selling at a discount for their bag, I think by Jack Moeller Strike or one of those firms. There's so many DATs now, it's really hard to stay on top of it. Any thoughts on this, Marty?
I mean, I think it's good. It's a nice competitive arena. I mean, we all knew there was a rush to DATs, and there were obviously too many. But now they have to, the rubber meets the road. They have to prove that they can beat, create yield and beat just holding spot Bitcoin. Specifically with the ETFs, I think everyone must be aware there's ETFs and there's DATs. They're two Wall Street regulated, entities that underlying have the spot asset. And what is the difference? And why is one better than the other? And why should I invest in one or the other? And we always knew there was an impending narrative, and I think it's become real. Specifically with the spot ETFs in Solana, it's like, why should I buy a Solana DAT over a spot ETF? What's the difference? Well, the difference is supposed to be the DAT is actually actively managed with yield strategies, to beat just holding the underlying Solana. But that has to be proven, right? I think we're in that prove it stage. I definitely think this, like even strategy needs to come out with better tooling. They need to come out with some kind of product that differentiates it over a simple BlackRock ETF. And I think we're just seeing a good competitive landscape. Somebody's got to prove it. They've got to create some value. And that's the thing.
And we saw some interesting stuff. We mentioned earlier about the FTX unlocks selling to funds like Pantera, Dan Moorhead was on talking about how much he made on Solana by buying these, but also the DATs are buying these bags at $140 and others. And we just discovered as well that Ken Griffin, he's the CEO of Citadel. Think of the boogeyman for market manipulation. He's like the Wintermute almost of stocks. They own 5% of DeFi Dev Corporation.
Yep, that's huge.
Why would they? Like he doesn't throw money around willy nilly, and he doesn't own 5% of MicroStrategy or anything like that. It's interesting. But anyway, that's the DAT news. Unless CTO, you got anything to add? This is also
I have
miners.
a question actually, which I look forward to asking. James, I see you as the supreme expert here on MicroStrategy. Can I share the screen?
Yeah,
sure.
Got to remove this.
Go ahead.
So there's this website, right? Sailor Tracker, which has tracked a lot of stuff. And at the bottom here is the MNAV chart, which points in this direction.
Correct.
Which, look that great. So they kind of the premium over the net asset value is trending down. Is this reflecting the real picture?
The key is when you look at these digital asset treasuries, when they were able to deploy large amounts of money, billions, and buy lots and lots of Bitcoin real cheap, they were increasing the amount of Satoshis per share very aggressively. And we know it's gone up 9x since August 2020. But now that the money, they're not doing convertibles, they're not ATMing as much, and Bitcoin price is much higher, they're not able to accrete as much Satoshis per share as before. And with that, the volatility of Bitcoin has been extremely low, and therefore the volatility of MicroStrategy is very low, and therefore the call options traders get very bored, and then there's no volatility, there's no vitality. It's all a big flywheel, and the flywheel's not feeding right now, and that's why people are losing interest. We had companies like Marathon, massive enterprise that does so much across Bitcoin mining and hosting and a whole bunch of stuff. They were trading at a discount to their Bitcoin bag 2 months ago. It's wild. So same thing with other big names too as well. So that's what's happening. There is no interest until we have a breakout for Bitcoin. Then the people FOMO back in.
I agree with that.
And if we don't get that, there's the volatility is vitality. Sailor says the same thing. Now, there is some things happening behind the scenes. He bought another 400 Bitcoin today. I do believe they're selling a lot of STRC. A lot of people are going for that yield, the 10% yield that is accretive, kind of like Mando. Sometimes you chase yield and JLP. For the TradFi markets, the insurance companies, the people that are forced to only invest in treasury type vehicles, that's becoming very attractive. Still not at a tipping point, but that's kind of where we are now with these things. And people are frustrated, especially top buyers. Top buyers are always frustrated in any asset. Mando, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think obviously it's a more competitive landscape for DAT. So, and that's been the last 3 months. I've always continually said, I think that he would have done better just kind of like not having to issue the prefs for the common. But I do think that a world where Bitcoin goes to 150K to 200K, a lot of this stuff will all be forgotten. Exactly. I think this right now we've had a pretty trending sideways market. I still think the current financing structure is manageable. Unless you start to see massive increases in Bitcoin, I don't necessarily, or the MNAV, I wouldn't necessarily max it out that much more. But I think it's fine. I don't think there's any real worry there. I just think in these periods of sideways, because of the competitive landscape for DATs and now the interest payments that MNAVs come down. But at Bitcoin 150K, Bitcoin 200K, particularly if you have a very strong move in December or January, I don't think any of this stuff will be relevant.
In fact, this goes directly back to what we discussed at the very beginning. Let's talk about a little bit of macro stuff as well. Well, we'll get to that last. We have this weird paradox. Despite scary levels, bond yields have been falling. We now have long-term bond yields under 4%. And back to you, Mando. You understand this bond market better than anybody. We've seen the rotation out of gold. I don't know where silver is. I don't look at it. But what's going on here with this weird paradox with defensive allocations? Are we beyond defensive allocations now? Or are we going risk on again? But there's some funky stuff. I wouldn't have pegged the 10-year yield below 4%. And well, I think
interest rates are down, right? People are expecting interest rates to come down now. We had an inflation print on Friday, which was slightly below 3%, or I think it was 2.9%. But I think the idea is we're going to enter now, and Trump wants them lower. And we're going to get a new Fed chair next. So I think there is an expectation that we will see bond yields, at least in the US, come down. In other countries, it's not the same story. Like if you're in France right now, or some of the countries in the EU, that's not been the case. Japan. Interestingly as well, also long-term yields, so 30-year yields are kind of trending higher globally at the moment. So there's this expectation that either there's going to be residual inflation, or the credit worthiness of some of these sovereigns over a long time period is starting to be questioned. So it's not all rosy in the bond market right now, but particularly in the US, what that move is people expecting a dovish Fed now for the next.
Because Ray Dalio must be going mad because he expected the long-term yields to spike to the moon, because it is a house of debt cards that's going to collapse sooner or later. But this was surprising that, I know Besant is trying to control the long end of the yield, long bonds for a long time, but that's that story. We touched on this briefly, but this AI-driven black swans, infrastructure disruptions, things crashing, that's going to be a big narrative for the future. We don't have time to discuss that in detail today. But final question, which is a fun question for people. What do we do at this stage of the market? If $100,000 landed on your lap, CTO, what would you do? Would you deploy it in treasuries, or would you get into crypto or AI innovation type stocks? People want to know. This is the last question. Quick round, everybody.
Yeah, I think from a technical perspective, like the last clear entry in NVIDIA, that was at $18. There was an inverse head and shoulder. The trend turned up, and it was in January 2023. Now price, for reminder for everyone, is 191. So it's like 10x ago was the entry in AI, and it was pretty clear at the time. What to buy in AI today, I don't know really, personally. While it starts feeling like Bitcoin has really lagged lately, it seems like perhaps better buy if forced to pick one.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially if you look at the breakdown and the correlation between Bitcoin and the NASDAQ. It's just like it was with gold. It is lagging, so it has to catch up. Marty, what would you do? $100,000 on your lap right now?
Sure. I mean, I think that if you look at it just sort of philosophically, I think gold has had its rally and its blow off top. I think Bitcoin is not. I think Bitcoin is solidified 100,000 as the bottom of the new range. So I would say that buying a Bitcoin with $100,000 is the move right now. I think AI missed the boat. The ETFs are, they're all very high. So is Tesla. Tesla at the bottom was the move. If this question was asked when Tesla was still in the $200 and $250 range, I'd say that was the move. But you've kind of missed that boat too. I think that Bitcoin is the lagger, especially it reacts most to liquidity, and we're just about to have a liquidity cycle. So in my opinion, Bitcoin is the move, or Solana. I think Bitcoin and Solana is the move with $100,000. Personally,
interesting.
Yep,
Mando, you're on the hot seat.
I actually agree. I think Bitcoin's the move. I think how Marty just set up there with the move in recent assets. If you're not owning Bitcoin right now, it's because you kind of are feeling the FOMO of not owning stocks. But my playbook is that we will see a rally towards the end of the year, and that you'll see some catch up at that period, just because I think the 4-year cycle will be deemed as slightly invalidated at that point. So I think Bitcoin right now, long term, like let's say over the next 2 years, it's more difficult. I do think some of the AI gains. I mean, I'm very bullish on Tesla. The more and more I read about it, so I would probably definitely have a bag of Tesla in there.
Yeah, but Tesla has gone on a rampage. I mean,
it's up 3x, right? I mean, it's a massive. It's at the top. I mean, it's due for another pullback for sure.
Well, it had that actually after the earnings, so it fell down to 413, and now it's 454, and that's just a couple of days ago. But the thing, again, looking out the window, Tesla now has cars running around in a sentient manner, driving themselves, parking themselves, doing everything. And that's the piece that people miss. And the other aspect is all the other good stuff that we've got going on. I think it would be prudent. I do believe we might still get an alt banana zone. I do believe that's on the cards, but we need the catalyst to light the fuse, and that's the ETFs. So we need the government to open for that. Bitcoin, considering what gold did, makes me very bullish. We got QE coming, we got rate cuts coming, we got risk on coming, and Q4 is still alive. It's not dead. So that could be interesting, but I'd be hesitant to buy Bitcoin at 115. But if it's going to 150, that's, an okay return. I think the other smaller assets can go a lot faster, higher. That's my thoughts.
I mean, this week is insane, guys. Just imagine this week. This government shutdown could end any day. They're voting literally every day, I believe, from Tuesday. Then we've got the FOMC, the BOJ meeting on Thursday, and Trump is expected to meet with Z. I mean, this is an insane week. So everything might change. But with regards to Tesla, I think look at it right now. It's trying to get it's a lower high, right, at 450. It could come back down to the bottom of the wedge and get a higher low around 320 to 360. If that happens, I would say that's your move on Tesla. Buy there. I wouldn't buy here. I'd wait for that pullback. If it breaks and get a higher high here into the 480, 500 region, I think you've lost it. You missed the entries. That's my opinion on Tesla. But Bitcoin, 100%, I think right now is at a low.
Yeah. And I like to look at Tesla NVIDIA chart. That'll tell you what Tesla's going to do over the next 3 years. Don't overthink it. That's the direction.
I think it's really nice to own assets where people are hoping for entries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it could come back. It could just continue to go vertical like Nvidia did. So you never really know with those sort of assets. I like to own stuff.
No, you're right. Tesla could have its Nvidia moment and rally up to 700.
It's wild. I just drove a long distance last night with FSD in very bad weather, and it continues to blow my mind. And it's a Cybertruck. It's not even 14, which is 10x better. Anyway, that's what's coming, everybody. Big thank you to CTO. Don't forget links below for this whole team. Thank you to Mr. Marty Party, Mr. Mando. Hope everybody's doing well around the world. Sorry about the time change. The Europeans have shifted the clock as they do this time of year. The Americans will do it. We'll be back in sync. But we always take 7:30 a.m. Pacific. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. Follow these gents. You probably already do. Thank you to the moderators in the chat too. And everybody for being here. You all rock. Buckhorn, Doc Intern, Rusted Woods. Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah. Bye. Have a very good day. Final thoughts, people. Maybe sit on your hands this week. Don't actively trade it. I think there's going to be a lot of moves this week, up and down, overnight until Friday, and we'll talk about it on Monday next week. Can't wait for that.
By the way, and if the Chinese play hardball, which I do believe they could, we'll all get a kick in the teeth. So be prepared for that. It could be a nasty dip.
100%.
Take care, my friends.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Great show.